Great. So welcome everyone. We are here with Imani Parkinson. She will be our educator tonight, talking about the wonderful Mr. Imagination. One Night Stand is a program where we are together for half an hour. We talk about one work of art by one artist, and we all get to discuss what we notice, what we see, perhaps even outside knowledge we might have about the artist. And hopefully collectively we can make some meaning out of what we're looking at. So Imani Parkinson is someone who has been teaching for Intuit now that we've gone online. And she is someone who I know through the Brooklyn Museum and their work there. So Imani, I'm going to pass it over to you and we'll get started.
Yeah, awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's nice to see you. I'm gonna, I need access to share my screen. I was gonna say the famous phrase, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. So I'm sure plenty of folks in this past year could fill in that blank. Great. Awesome. So Paula already introduced us, so we can get started. So we're going to be exploring the work of Mr. Imagination. This is like an awesome in the studio portrait that I think has helped ground me in my research and learning more about Mr. Imagination and his work. And I hope it helps set the stage for you as well. So this is the artwork we're going to be spending our time with today. I have my clock visible, so we can really spend our time together and pace ourselves, right? So I'm going to give you all a moment to zoom in, zoom out, see some things that you notice, maybe what materials seem familiar, what materials are you curious about, and we'll talk about it all together. Anyone's ready to share some observations, we're a small group, so you could raise your virtual hand or you can add some things to the chat. Oh, Lindsay, I see your real hand. Okay.
Thanks. The top of the totem looks almost like a beehive, like a golden beehive that has like two little, I don't know what you call them, like little holes, I guess. And then almost like wire with feathers at the end.
Yeah, so Lindsay's kind of like zooming us into the top of this sculpture, and it kind of has this like we would say like a honeycomb kind of shape, beehive kind of shape, and then we're seeing these openings into there as well, and it's out of this golden beehivey situation that we're getting these wires that sprout outwards. Any other observations? Oh yeah, if you start talking and then I'll see your face pop up.
I like how the faces in this totem are kind of, instead of kind of all looking straight forward, they're looking in slightly different directions.
Yeah, so if we're looking at this kind of almost like a pattern, it feels like, right? It's like one person's looking one way, then another way, then it kind of creates this pattern moving up the totem.
Each face is unique. It's not the same face repeated 4 times.
Yeah, so even in like this repetition, there's still like uniqueness for each face. Totally. Is there any part of this artwork that folks are curious about? And so Milo zooming in, thinking about the ornamentation, right? So when we look at the faces, each of them are adorned slightly differently on that forehead and this headband area, right? Jen's wondering about like the materials. Yeah, so the materials is made of like found stone, right? And then we're also seeing the wire and feathers as well.
I have a comment.
Yes, I want to hear it.
What I like about it is that, yes, the faces are going in different directions, but the characteristics on the faces are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, to me, it signifies a tribe, meaning a tribe in terms of community.
Mm-hmm.
So the stacking on top of each other, to me, indicates that there's no real hierarchy, that the people in this community are in support of one another. So every position in this totem is equal, because if you pulled any one of them out, it would all topple. So I see that as an example of how our community could and or should operate, with each person being not only equal, but serving their own purpose in their own position.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a tendency to only honor those that are sitting on the top, but the ones on top don't get to hold their position.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone else doesn't hold theirs. So it's really symbolic for me.
Yeah, and I think this idea of like, you know, we're naming the artwork as like a totem, right? And this is an art practice that comes out of indigenous communities in the Pacific Northwest. And oftentimes it is about representing your community, your ancestral stories, right? So I think, Renee, you're also really thinking about how these faces are stacked together as a sign of unity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And there's also variety in that unity. Not everyone, like I'm noticing that not everyone's the same complexion, right?
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the facial features are different. And like there's a similar style, and that style is what helps unify them.
Right.
But we're able to see the uniqueness when we look a little bit closer. Yeah, awesome. And I think that this idea of, we often use the word totem and use it in a way of talking about who's on top, right? Or who's on the bottom. And when we're looking at this artwork, each of these figures are adorned, right? So each of them have something that may be a symbol of their importance and the way that they are part of this larger narrative, this larger lineage, right? Awesome. I have to get back in the, oh yeah. So Milo zooming in a little bit to this, the top part, and it almost looks like a fist, right? Which we often associate with unity as well. So I wanted like us also to think about how art can be used as a way to celebrate or affirm your identity, right? So when we're looking at this artwork, do we see any clues of like celebration in this artwork?
I see they're all men because they all have beards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe we'll celebrate it as like this form of masculinity is happening here.
Or patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Or, yeah. I mean, I think it may say more about women's lack of position as opposed to men's strength, because it's just assumed. It's just assumed that men would be in power, because I just noticed every one of these figures is bearded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when you're how connecting back to your earlier point, Renee, about this idea of like lineage, right? And how we mark a lineage or mark a generation differs from culture to culture, right?
Right.
And yeah, so we're seeing like Mr. Imagination could be drawing on this like patriarchal culture, right? So this connection with ancestors or who has come before you, who's in your family, that's held down the by the masculine or the male person, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know if this is a
Mhm.
sign of celebration, but I noticed that some of the heads or faces have like decorative headbands, and I don't know if that's um, just like, I guess, a design element or if it's something marking something more significant. But I did notice, I think the middle two have them. I can't really tell if the bottom and top have like the decorative headbands.
Yeah, the decorative headbands, and it seems like the ones on the top and bottom are a little more simple, right? If we're looking in the center of the head, it looks on the bottom one that almost reminds you of a zipper. I'm not sure if anyone else felt that reminded them of a zipper.
They're just thinner on the top and the bottom. It's like a thong or like something maybe made out of leather that doesn't have a lot of beading, but has a centerpiece.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a bit thinner versus the face that's most adorned is also, we're noticing, is like the focal point of this work, right? Who's in the middle. Yeah. So I want to connect this to a little bit about Mr. Imagination's history and how his artwork has changed over time, right? And he's always been inspired with using art materials that are found. Should I send your message? Oh, did you? Sorry, my watch thinks I'm talking to them, but not what's happening. Right? Series clearly present in this program tonight. But so with Mr. Imagination, a lot of times when we're learning about these artists, there is a focus on some of the tragedy events that have happened in his life, right? And with Mr. Imagination, he was unfortunately like mugged, right? And in this mugging, he was actually shot, which left him in a coma for 6 weeks. But it was in this experience of this coma that he had an outer body experience and was able to travel through time, travel through learning, seeing, visualizing, experiencing ancient civilizations. And out of that experience, he then called to see that his artwork, its purpose has changed, right? The purpose now had a more spiritual meaning and also a way of bringing joy to other people. So when we're thinking about spirituality, when we're thinking about art objects, they oftentimes can go hand in hand, right? And is there a way that you all see that spirituality can be a way of affirming your identity? It doesn't have to be you. It could be like you as one in the world. So, oh, yeah. So Milo's giving us a little bit more details about the possible symbolism of the feathers. So symbolizing honor, trust, strength, wisdom, freedom. Yeah, and also elements of a patriarchal culture. Thank you for that, Milo. Yeah. So is there a way that spirituality can be a way of affirming someone's identity? So something that comes to mind for me is many times in all different spiritualities, there's this idea of this creation story, right? And for throughout time, throughout human generations, this is longing for like, where do you come from, right? This whether it's ancestral, where it's like, how did we get here? How are we on Earth? This kind of sense of belonging. And for many folks, spirituality does create that sense of belonging. And it is in my impression that it's out of this intense, this traumatic experience that actually transformation was possible. And Mr. Imagination was then able, yeah, so sorry, I'm thinking and reading at the same time. But so I wanted to think about the ways that out of this traumatic experience, Mr. Imagination has been able to create a new history, a new ancestral line for himself, right? And this ancestral line that he saw for himself was related to royalty, right? He was having visions of seeing himself as an African king. And his artworks are reflecting this new transformation on his past and his alternate futures as well, right? Yeah, so Milo's saying, of course, a lot of Black people see themselves through the lens of religion and spirituality. Yeah, thank you for that, Milo. So I wanted to, this is a little personal for like you all, but I wanted to know, like, are there certain ancestors that you call on to, or certain stories from your family that help you feel most close and grounded to who you are?
I'm still trying to process the comment from Milo about how most Black people, I don't want to misquote it, see themselves through the lens of religion. I don't believe that, but I'm not going to debate it. I'm just saying that I think depending on how much you've thought about, you know, the meaning of life, et cetera, or the meaninglessness of life, and giving purpose to life, I don't necessarily think that the exit door for every Black person is to run through the Baptist church or to run to Trinity or whatever. I mean, I was raised in a church, but that, I'll be honest, in no way influences what I see as the ultimate purpose for not only Black life, but life in general. So I'm seeing more of a universal thing here, and that even when I look at this work, and though Mr. Imagination's experience is, I'm assuming, of a Black person, I'm not seeing a Black person necessarily in his work. He's chosen to use Black figures, but I think the story is far deeper than just the melanin in our skins, and that melanin does not send me flying in the direction, especially not of organized religion. It turns me more toward a Tolstoy or any thinking mind that has pondered the meaning of life.
Yeah, and I want to affirm that, you know, there are so many nuances, and we can, if we looked at more of Mr. Imagination's work, we would see that he's pulling from so many different cultures and so many different ways of reflecting on identity, right? Or on this idea of history, ancient civilization, where do we come from, you know? So I thank you for saying that, because and also for a lot of folks, organized religion is something that's triggering. There's a lot of harm that has come out of that, of the ways that has spread across what we call the United States. So thank you for reminding us of the nuances, even within groups that we may or may not be a part of.
Imani, you asked for, I think the question was related to, is it a type of connecting to the ancestors? You know, it's interesting in thinking about this work and it being, you know, a very physical object that was made and by the artist. Recently, I started doing a lot of sewing and a lot of quilting just because of my own interest. And later on, realizing that I actually have a family of quilters that I had no idea about, because when my family migrated to the United States, those traditions didn't come with them. So it makes me think so much about like how much of that is a memory that's just in your DNA somehow.
Yeah.
So which makes me think about, you know, this sort of like passage through time and this like time travel that you're bringing up for Mr. Imagination.
Yeah, it's interesting how like those kind of like physical things, whether it's like art making, whether it's making food, whether it's music, those kind of practices are like a form of time travel, right? And connect us with folks that we may not have remembered, you know, we may not have had a chance to know, but still can connect us back that way as well. Yeah, that's awesome. My great grandmother was like a baker, so I'm trying to get on my baking, and like in doing it, I want to think about like a sense of gratitude for who she was for my family, and to think about how I can feel a little more connected to someone that I never knew, you know? Yeah. So we have about close to 5 minutes left, right? Am I doing math correctly? And I would love for like to kind of open the floor if there's any other like observations or folks that are thinking about both this artwork as named Totem, and how maybe that word changes how you view the artwork from in the beginning, or if there's any other curiosities or ponderings you have around this artwork.
And Imani, in your research, did you find, I mean, I know this piece as it's an Intuit's collection, but did you find in your research and looking into Mr. Imagination if he made other works like this? I know he does a lot with bottle caps, and he makes a lot of sculptures, but this is the only one I've seen that's similar to this. Did you find other pieces like this in other collections? I guess I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the only one that I saw that I think actually was from a clip from when you all had a show in 2015. And it seemed like it was like this, but it was like it was larger, adorned with bottle caps primarily, and seemed, from my perspective, like deities. Like there was a blue face and a red face, and like the blue face, I was getting like Krishna vibes, but I'm not sure if that's exactly where his inspiration was from. But then there was also like a red face, and it was really long, and like the news coverage really wanted to like let us know how many faces were on the sculpture. It was like a slow pan. So that was the most similar artwork that I came across. Yeah. But I will say that a lot of the sculptures do have that the way that the faces are stylized, like a little bit remind me of like whether it's like ancient Egyptian kind of like carving into the sandstone, or like Assyrian relief kind of style. That's kind of something that comes up for me. Yeah. Paula, do you know how tall this artwork is? I don't think I had dimensions.
I saw the dimensions in the permanent collection. I think it's about 6 feet tall.
Wow, 6 feet?
I think so. Let me double check. I have the collection checklist.
Yeah, 6'6".
Lindsay.
It's quite tall. I don't know, and maybe Paula could speak to this, if that's the height of the sculpture with the feathers, or if it's just the sculpture itself, or I guess like the stone itself. But I know that it's 80 inches tall, which is tall.
Yeah, that is tall. And I think like definitely like Totem with a capital T. That's what I got from like getting that height. Yeah. Yeah, there is movement.
It also makes me think that the faces in the totem are maybe scaled to human size, maybe, or probably bigger.
Yeah, maybe a little bigger, because I remember like when drawing, when you're, don't they say you're like 10 heads? Is that true? I feel like Imani back in like undergrad is like shaking her head at me right now. So I won't embarrass her too much. But yeah, I would think that it's probably a little larger than a life-size head. Awesome. Well, we're out of time, and I want to thank you all for this journey, this time travel that we had, and this moment together. Yeah, this 30 minutes flies by. Yes, it was like a boop bop.
Can I say
Thank
one
you.
thing?
Oh, go ahead.
With pieces like this, though obviously the artist had certain features and things in mind, I think we have to be careful to think universally about pieces like this, because it's really applicable to anyone. Anyone can see themselves in it. So even if you looked at the piece, say through the lens of Afrofuturism, there's all kinds of people in all time spans, et cetera, et cetera. So
Renee, were you in my notebook?
no, darling.
Because I was thinking about Afrofuturism. I was like, we can't go on an Afrofuturism rant.
I've never met you, but I think we can all see ourselves in this piece, you know, no matter what your ethnicity is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll shut up.
I appreciated what you've given to this conversation. I think it's true. And I think especially when you're looking at artists of color, to think about them as artists first, and in that way to like let that lead, especially when it's easy to make judgments and use artworks as a way to make judgments as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us. We will be here again next month talking about a different artist and a different work of art. And thank you, Imani, for teaching us all the way from New York. And I hope all of you have a really wonderful beginning of the summer or late spring night. And we'll see you here next month.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.